Lena Hart stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror of her penthouse bathroom. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, and her designer dress probably cost more than what most people made in a month. But something felt empty in her green eyes. Even with all this luxury around her, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was missing. "Darling, are you ready?" Grayson Wolf's voice carried from the bedroom. "The charity gala starts in an hour." Lena took one last look at herself and forced a smile. This was her life now. Endless parties, charity events, and being photographed on the arm of one of New York's most eligible bachelors. For 3 years, she'd been living what most would call a fairy tale. But fairy tales never mentioned how lonely it could feel at the top. She walked out to find Grayson adjusting his bow tie. At 42, he was still strikingly handsome with his salt and pepper hair and sharp features. He barely looked up from his phone as she entered. "The Henderson deal is closing tonight," he said, still typing. "We need to make an appearance at the gala. Then I have a late meeting." "On a Saturday night?" Lena asked, though she already knew the answer. There was always a deal, always a meeting, always something more important. "Money doesn't sleep, sweetheart." He finally looked up, giving her an appreciative once-over. "You look perfect. The photographers will love that dress." Of course they would. Grayson had his assistant pick it out specifically for tonight's event. Everything in their life was calculated, planned, designed to maintain an image of perfection. The elevator ride down to their waiting car was silent, filled only with the sound of Grayson's fingers tapping on his phone screen. Lena watched the floor numbers decrease, remembering how excited she used to be about these events when she first met Grayson. Back then, everything seemed magical. The champagne, the cameras flashing, the whispers of, "There's Grayson Wolf," and his girlfriend, as they walked into a room. Now at 32, she felt more like a prop than a partner. The charity gala was being held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. As their car pulled up, Lena could already see the photographers lined up behind the velvet ropes. Grayson finally put his phone away and turned to her. "Remember to smile," he said, as if she needed reminding after 3 years of this. "The Thompson Foundation is one of our biggest investors." The car door opened, and suddenly they were on display. Grayson's hand found its usual spot on her lower back, guiding her up the steps as cameras flashed. They'd done this dance so many times, Lena could probably do it in her sleep. Smile, pause, turn slightly to the left, smile again. Inside, the museum had been transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over the hundreds of guests in designer clothes, all pretending to care about whatever cause they were supposedly supporting tonight. "Grayson!" a loud voice boomed across the room. "You old devil!" Lena turned to see a man approaching them, and her heart skipped a beat. Noah Carter wasn't wearing a designer tuxedo like the other men in the room. His suit was well worn but clean, and his tie was slightly crooked. But his smile was real. "Noah," Grayson clapped his old friend on the back, "I didn't expect to see you here." "These tickets aren't exactly in a mechanic's budget," Noah laughed, running a hand through his messy brown hair. "Got invited by a client. Figured I should see how the other half lives." His eyes met Lena's, and for a moment she felt seen. Really, seen, for the first time in ages. "Hello, Lena." "Hi, Noah." Her voice came out softer than she intended. They'd met a few times before at Grayson's events, but tonight something felt different. Maybe it was the way Noah's blue eyes lingered on her face instead of her expensive dress, or how his smile reached all the way to those eyes, creating little crinkles at the corners. "Excuse me." Grayson's phone was already back in his hand. "I need to take this business." He walked away, leaving Lena and Noah standing in awkward silence. Around them, the party continued its elaborate dance of wealth and pretense. "Would you like to get some air?" Noah asked suddenly. "You look like you could use a break from all this. Sparkle." Lena hesitated. She knew she should stay, mingle with the right people, play her part. But Noah's offer felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. "Yes," she said, surprising herself. "I'd like that very much." They found their way to a small balcony overlooking the city. The noise of the party faded behind them, replaced by the distant sound of traffic and the winter wind. Lena took a deep breath, feeling like she could finally fill her lungs properly. "Better," Noah asked, leaning against the railing. Much, she smiled, and this time it didn't feel forced. How did you know? You had the same look I get when I'm surrounded by all this. He gestured back toward the party. Like you're wearing clothes that don't quite fit, even though they're perfectly tailored. Lena stared at him, startled by his perception. I thought I hid it better than that. Maybe you do, from people who are used to seeing what they want to see. His voice was gentle. But I'm just a mechanic. I fix things for a living. You learn to spot when something's not running right. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. Are you saying I'm not running right, Mr. Carter? I'm saying you don't look happy, Ms. Hart. His eyes met hers again, serious now. And someone as beautiful as you should always be happy. The word beautiful hit her differently coming from him. When Grayson said it, it was about her appearance, about how she looked on his arm. But the way Noah said it felt like he was seeing something deeper. I should get back, she said quickly, suddenly afraid of the feelings stirring in her chest. Grayson will be looking for me. Noah straightened up but didn't move toward the door. He'd be a fool not to. Lena hurried back into the party, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She found Grayson exactly where she expected, surrounded by business associates, phone in hand. He didn't ask where she'd been, but for the rest of the night, she could feel Noah's eyes on her from across the room. And for the first time in years, she felt something crack in the perfect facade she'd built around herself. Something dangerous, something real. As they rode home in their luxury car, Grayson talked about the Henderson deal. Lena watched the city, lights blur past the window, thinking about crooked ties and honest smiles, about hands calloused from real work instead of manicured for show. She was playing a dangerous game. She knew that. But as she lay awake in their king-sized bed later that night, listening to Grayson's steady breathing, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Noah had looked at her, like she was more than just a beautiful accessory, more than just Grayson, Wolf's girlfriend. For the first time in 3 years, Lena fell asleep wondering if she'd been living someone else's dream all along. The next morning, Lena couldn't stop thinking about Noah. She tried to focus on her yoga class, on her lunch with Grayson's business partners' wives, on anything else. But her mind kept drifting back to that balcony moment. A week passed, filled with the usual routine of charity meetings and social obligations. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, her driver called in sick. Grayson was in Tokyo for business, and she needed to get to a board meeting for one of her charities. I'll call you a cab, Grayson's assistant offered over the phone. No need, Lena said, making a decision that would change everything. I'll drive myself. She hadn't driven her own car in months. The sleek Mercedes sat in their building's garage, barely used. Of course, it chose this day to make a strange clicking sound and refused to start. Frustrated, Lena remembered the business card she'd slipped into her wallet the night of the gala. Noah had handed it to her just before she left, saying, "If you ever need anything fixed." His garage wasn't far. 20 minutes later, she pulled up in front of Carter's Auto Repair in her designer heels and pencil skirt. The place was nothing like the glossy world she'd grown used to, just an honest garage with oil stains on the concrete and the smell of rubber in the air. Noah was under a car when she walked in, only his legs visible. "Be right with you," he called out. "Take your time," Lena answered, and she heard a loud thunk as he jerked in surprise. He rolled out from under the car, a smudge of grease on his cheek. His face lit up when he saw her, making her heart. "Do that dangerous little flip again." "Lena Hart," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Now this is a surprise." "My car won't start," she explained quickly. "I remembered you gave me your card. And you thought of me. I'm flattered." He grinned. "Let me clean up and I'll take a look." While he washed his hands, Lena looked around the garage. Photos covered one wall. Noah with different clients, all smiling. Some cars she recognized as classics. It wasn't fancy, but it felt real. "So," Noah said, returning, "where's this troublemaking car of yours?" They drove back to her building in his tow truck. The conversation flowed easily, nothing like the practiced small talk at Grayson's parties. Noah told her about growing up in Queens, about learning mechanics from his father, about his dreams of expanding the garage. "It's not much compared to Grayson's empire," he said, "but it's mine." "I think it's wonderful," Lena replied honestly. "Are you doing what you love?" Noah glanced at her. "Are you doing what you love?" The question hit her hard. What did she love? She used to paint before meeting Grayson, used to dream of opening her own art gallery. Now her days were filled with charity luncheons and society events. "I'm not sure anymore," she admitted quietly. They reached her building and Noah checked her car. "Just a loose connection," he said after a few minutes. "I can fix it right here." Lena watched him work, fascinated by the sure movements of his hands. He explained what he was doing as he went along, and she found herself genuinely interested. "There," he said finally. "Try it now." The car started perfectly. Lena felt an odd disappointment that their time together was ending. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her purse. Noah shook his head. "Consider it a favor for a friend." "We're friends?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. "I'd like to be." His blue eyes held hers. "If that's okay with you." It wasn't okay. It was dangerous. But Lena heard herself say, "I'd like that too." That night she couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about Noah's garage, about the honesty in his voice when he talked about his work, about how alive she'd felt just sitting in his tow truck. Her phone buzzed with a text from Grayson. "Meeting running late, don't wait up." She stared at the message, feeling the distance between them grow larger. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she sent a text to the number on Noah's business card. "Thank you for today." His reply came quickly. "Any time. Sweet dreams, Lena." 3 simple words, but they made her smile more than any of Grayson's. Expensive gifts had in months. The next few weeks passed in a blur of secret moments. Her car seemed to develop a lot of minor problems, each one requiring Noah's attention. They started meeting for coffee, just as friends, she told herself. He showed her his favorite diner, where the coffee came in chipped mugs and the waitresses knew his name. "This is my world," he said one morning, watching her try to figure out how to eat an oversized burger. "Not quite what you're used to, huh?" "I like it," she replied, and she meant it. "It feels real," but reality had a way of crashing in. One afternoon, as they sat in the diner, Lena saw a familiar face walk by the window. Miranda, one of the society wives, did a double take at seeing Lena in such a place and with such company. "I have to go," Lena said quickly, gathering her things. "Lena, wait." Noah caught her hand. The touch sent electricity through her arm. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Grayson isn't here," Noah finished. "He's never here, Lena." "When was?" "The last time he asked how you were feeling, what you were thinking. When was the last time he made you laugh?" Tears stung her eyes because he was right, but she pulled her hand away anyway. "I have a good life," she said. "A perfect life." Perfect isn't the same as happy. Noah's voice was gentle. "You know that better than anyone." She fled the diner, but his words followed her home. That night, at another charity event, she watched Grayson work the room. He was charming, successful, everything she thought she wanted. But when he smiled, it never reached his eyes the way Noah's did. Later, as she lay awake in their perfect penthouse, her phone lit up with a text from Noah. "I miss your smile, the real one." Lena held the phone to her chest, feeling her heart race. She was falling for Noah Carter, and there was nothing perfect about it. It was messy and complicated and terrifying, and for the first time in years, she felt completely wonderfully alive. Miranda's sighting at the diner spread through New York's high society like wildfire. Whispers followed Lena at every event. She could feel the stares, hear the hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. Even Grayson's assistant started giving her strange looks. But Grayson himself seemed oblivious. He was too focused on a hostile takeover of a rival company to notice the changing atmosphere around his girlfriend. When he was home, which wasn't, often he spent his time on phone calls or buried in his laptop. One evening, as they were getting ready for yet another business dinner, Grayson finally brought it up. "Someone mentioned seeing you in Queens," he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "At some diner?" Lena's hands froze on her earrings. Yes, I was there. Why would you go to Queen's for lunch? His tone was more confused than accusatory, like the idea of someone choosing to eat somewhere that didn't have a Michelin star was completely foreign to him. I was helping with a charity project, she lied, hating herself for it. Food banks for underprivileged neighborhoods. Grayson nodded, already losing interest. Just be careful where you're seen, darling. Image is everything in our world, not her world, not anymore. Every time she sat through another fancy dinner, laughed at another fake joke, or posed for another photograph, she felt more. And more like an actress in a play. The only times she felt real were the stolen moments with Noah. They started meeting in a small park far from the usual society haunts. She would bring coffee in paper cups, and they would sit on a bench talking about everything and nothing. Noah told her about his struggles keeping the garage afloat, about his dreams of expanding, about the bank loans he couldn't get because he refused to compromise on quality or overcharge his customers. Most of my clients are working people, he explained. They depend on their cars to get to work, pick up their kids. I can't charge them what the fancy places do. Lena found herself sharing things too. About her childhood in a middle-class family, her art school dreams, how she'd met Grayson at a gallery where she worked as an assistant. He swept me off my feet, she admitted. Private jets, 5-star restaurants, front row at Fashion Week. It was like a fairy tale. And now? Noah asked softly. Now I know that fairy tales don't tell you what happens after midnight, when the ball is over and the glass slippers hurt your feet and you're not sure if you're Cinderella or just pretending to be. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. His palm was warm against hers, calloused from honest work. They sat in silence, watching children play in the park, both aware that this moment couldn't last. But it did last, and so did the next one. And the next. Spring turned to summer, and Lena found herself living 2 lives. In one, she was Grayson Wolf's perfect girlfriend, attending galas and charity events, always camera-ready, always smiling. In the other, she was just Lena, sitting in a park, with Noah laughing at his terrible jokes, feeling her heart race every time their hands brushed. The breaking point came on a warm July evening. Grayson was hosting a dinner party for potential investors. Lena stood in their kitchen supervising the caterers when her phone buzzed with a text from Noah. I know I shouldn't say this, but I'm falling in love with you. The phone slipped from her hands, clattering on the marble counter. One of the caterers gave her a concerned look. Are you okay, miss? No, she wasn't okay. She was terrified because Noah's words made her happier than anything had in years. The dinner party was torture. She sat beside Grayson, playing her usual role, but her phone burned in her clutch like a secret about to explode. Across the table, one of the investors' wives was talking about her recent divorce. Sometimes you have to choose happiness over security, the woman said, and Lena nearly choked on her wine. Later that night, after the guests had left and Grayson was asleep, Lena stood on their penthouse balcony. The city stretched out below her, millions of lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment in Queens, Noah was probably working late at his desk, going over the garage's books. She took out her phone and typed, I'm falling in love with you too, and it scares me more than anything. His reply came immediately. Meet me tomorrow, our usual bench. Lena stared at the message for a long time. She thought about her life with Grayson, the security, the luxury, the perfect image they presented to the world. Then she thought about Noah's smile, about how alive she felt when she was with him, about the way her heart raced every time their eyes met. Yes, she typed back. One word that could change everything. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she went through photos on her phone, endless society events with Grayson, both of them smiling their camera smiles. Then one candid shot she'd taken in the park, Noah laughing at something she'd said, his eyes crinkled at the corners, sunlight catching in his hair. The contrast was startling. In one life, she had everything she thought she wanted. In the other, she had everything she never knew she needed. Morning came too slowly. Lena told Grayson's assistant she had a migraine and couldn't make it to her scheduled charity meeting. Instead, she took a taxi to their park, her heart pounding with each mile. Noah was already there, sitting on their bench. When he saw her, His whole face lit up in a way that made her wonder how she'd ever settled for anything less than this kind of joy. "I was afraid you wouldn't come," he said as she sat beside him. "I'm afraid of a lot of things," she replied honestly, "but not being here with you isn't one of them anymore." He took her hand, and this time she didn't think about who might see. Let them see. Let them talk. For the first time in years, she was choosing her own happiness over everyone else's expectations. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Noah squeezed her hand. "Now? Now we figure it out together. No scripts, no perfect images, no pretending. Just us being real." A weight lifted from Lena's shoulders, one she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. But as she sat there holding Noah's hand, she knew the hardest part was still to come. She had to tell Grayson. And in New York's high society, hearts weren't the only things that could be broken. Grayson found out before Lena could tell him. Miranda, the society wife who had seen her at the diner, finally went directly to him with her concerns. She came to his office on a Thursday afternoon, armed with photos someone had taken of Lena and Noah in the park. Lena was at home when Grayson stormed in, hours earlier than usual. His face was dark with anger, his normally perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "How long?" he demanded, throwing the photos on their glass coffee table. They scattered across the surface, Lena and Noah sitting on their bench, holding hands, laughing together. "Grayson, I can explain. How long have you been making a fool of me?" His voice was deadly quiet. "With my best friend of all people?" Lena stood her ground, even as her heart raced. "Nothing happened. Grayson, we're just what? Friends?" He picked up one of the photos. "Is this how you look at all your friends, Lena? Like they're your whole world?" She looked at the photo in his hand. It was from last week, and the camera had caught her gazing at Noah with such naked adoration that she barely recognized herself. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. "When? After how many more secret meetings? After how many more lies?" Grayson's control was slipping. "Do you have any idea what this could do to my reputation, to my business?" And there it was. Not, "Do you love him?" or "What did I do wrong?" His first concern was his image, his business. "I'm sorry," Lena said, but she wasn't apologizing for Noah. She was sorry for pretending for so long, for both of them. "Sorry isn't good enough." Grayson pulled out his phone. "Noah's garage is behind on its loans. One call to the bank and—" "Don't you dare!" Lena's voice rose. "This is between us, Grayson. Leave him out of it." He should have thought of that before he went after my girlfriend. Grayson's fingers hovered over his phone. Everything he's worked for gone with one call. Lena felt sick. This was the real Grayson Wolf, the ruthless businessman who destroyed competitors without mercy. And now he was aiming that destruction at Noah. "If you do this," she said carefully, "if you hurt him, I'll go to every magazine, every newspaper. So I'll tell them exactly what kind of man you really are." Grayson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Who do you think they'll believe? The billionaire CEO or the gold digger who cheated on him with his mechanic friend?" The words hit like slaps. Lena walked to the window, looking out at the city she once thought was magical. Now it just felt like a beautiful prison. "I never cheated on you," she said quietly, "but I did fall in love with him." The silence that followed was deafening. When she turned around, Grayson was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "Love." He spat the word like it was poison. "What has love ever built? What has it ever achieved? Look around you, Lena. This is what achievement looks like. This is what power looks like. This is what emptiness looks like," she corrected him. "And I can't live with it anymore." She walked to their bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, and started packing. Grayson followed her. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice calmer now. "Noah can't give you this life. No more private jets, no more designer clothes, no more charity galas. You'll be nobody." Lena closed her suitcase. "I'd rather be nobody with him than a pretty decoration with you. If you walk out that door," Grayson's voice was ice cold, "don't expect to ever walk back in." "I won't." She grabbed her suitcase. "Goodbye, Grayson." The elevator ride down was the longest of her life. Her phone was already buzzing with messages, probably society wives who had heard about the scandal. By tomorrow, she would be the talk of the city. Outside, the doorman hailed her a taxi. As she climbed in, she looked up at the penthouse one last time. 3 years of her life gone in an afternoon. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked. Lena took a deep breath. "Queens, please, Carter's Auto Repair." The taxi pulled away from the curb, and with each block, the weight on Lena's chest got lighter. But as they crossed the bridge into Queens, fear started to creep in. What if Grayson had already made that call to the bank? What if she had just destroyed Noah's life? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Noah. "Miranda told me what happened. Are you okay?" Tears filled her eyes as she typed back, "I left him. I'm on my way to you." His reply was immediate. "I'll be waiting." The taxi turned onto his street, and Lena could see Noah standing outside his garage. He looked worried, nervous, and more handsome than any man in an expensive suit ever could. As the taxi stopped, Noah rushed to open her door. Before she could say anything, he pulled her into his arms. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "This is all my fault." Lena pulled back to look at him. "No, it's not. It's nobody's fault. Sometimes the heart just knows what it wants, even if the head takes a while to catch up." Noah wiped a tear from her cheek. "Grayson will try to destroy me. Then we'll face it together." She touched his face. "I choose you, Noah. Whatever comes next, I choose you." He kissed her then, right there on the street in front of his garage. It wasn't perfect or polished or photo-worthy, but it was real. And right now, real was all that mattered. Behind them, the sun was setting over Queens, painting the sky in colors no penthouse view could match. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Grayson's revenge, society's judgment, the struggle of building a new life. But for now, in Noah's arms, Lena was finally, completely home. Grayson's revenge came swift and hard. The morning after Lena left, Noah arrived at his garage to find an eviction notice taped to the door. Overnight, Grayson had bought the building through one of his shell companies. "He's giving us 30 days to clear out," Noah told Lena, his hands shaking as he held the notice. They were sitting in his small apartment above the garage, where Lena had spent the night on his worn but comfortable couch. "This is just the beginning," Lena warned. She knew how Grayson operated. "He won't stop here." She was right. By noon, Noah's bank called. His business loans were being called in immediately. An hour later, his insurance company cancelled his garage's coverage. Then his parts suppliers started calling one by one, cancelling their contracts. "He's trying to bury me," Noah said, slumping in his chair as another supplier called with bad news. Lena watched. Him, her heart breaking. This was her fault. Her choice had brought Grayson's wrath down on the man she loved. Maybe... She hesitated. "Maybe I should go back. Try to talk to him." Noah's head snapped up. "No, absolutely not." He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "We'll figure this out, together, remember." But figuring it out wasn't easy. Noah's regular customers stayed loyal, but no new ones came in. Someone had posted terrible reviews online claiming his garage did shoddy work. Lena knew exactly who was behind it. She tried to help with her savings, but 3 years of living in luxury hadn't left her with much of her own money. Most of what she had was tied up in gifts from Grayson, jewelry, designer clothes, things she couldn't bring herself to keep. Then came the newspaper articles. "Billionaire's girlfriend runs off with mechanic," splashed across the gossip pages. The stories painted her as a gold digger who had played both men, and Noah as a scheming friend who had betrayed his wealthy benefactor. "Don't read that trash," Noah said, throwing the newspaper in the garbage. But Lena could see how the stories hurt him. One morning, about a week after she'd left Grayson, Lena was helping at the garage when a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Thomas Chen, one of Grayson's biggest rivals in the business world. "Miss Hart," he smiled, looking around the garage. "Quite a change from the penthouse, isn't it?" Lena straightened her back. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hands slightly greasy from helping Noah with an oil change. "What do you want, Mr. Chen?" "To help." He pulled out a business card. "I've been trying to take Grayson Wolf down for years, a scandal like this. Well, let's just say I'm willing to pay handsomely for an exclusive tell-all interview." Lena felt sick. "You want me to trash Grayson in the press?" I want you to tell the truth, Chen's smile turned predatory. About his business practices, his personal life, everything you know. The number on that card has many zeros after it. Noah appeared from the back of the garage. The lady said no. I'm trying to help you, Chen insisted. Wolf is going to destroy you both. Let me give you the ammunition to fight back. Lena looked at the card, thinking about all the secrets she knew, all the shady deals she'd overheard. One interview could solve all their problems, but it would mean becoming exactly what Grayson accused her of being. She ripped the card in half. Get out. After Chen left, Noah pulled her close. We'll find another way. But their options were running out. The eviction date was getting closer, and no bank would give Noah a loan to relocate. Most of his employees had already left, scared off by the uncertainty. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Rodriguez, one of Noah's longtime customers, came in with her old minivan. She ran a small catering business, and her van was essential for deliveries. The transmission's gone, Noah told her after checking the vehicle. I'm sorry, but with parts and labor, it's going to be expensive. Mrs. Rodriguez's face fell. How much? Noah quoted her the price, adding apologetically, I can try to find cheaper parts, but no, Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted. I trust your work, Noah. You've never cheated me. Not like those fancy places that charge triple and do half the job. She pulled out a checkbook. My sister's been saving to expand her restaurant. She'll understand if I borrow from that fund. Lena watched the exchange, something clicking in her mind. While Grayson was trying to destroy them from above, they had support from below, from the real people who knew Noah's work and character. That night, as they sat in Noah's small kitchen eating, takeout, Lena shared her idea. What if we turned this whole thing around? Instead of running from Grayson's attacks, what if we used them? Noah looked confused. How? Every time he hits us, more people hear about you, about your garage. She leaned forward excitedly. What if we started a social media campaign? Real stories from real customers like Mrs. Rodriguez. Show people what you really do here. A mechanic's shop isn't exactly Instagram material, Noah said dubiously, but honesty is. Integrity is. Lena grabbed her phone. People are tired of being ripped off by big companies. They want someone they can trust. She started filming Noah as he worked the next day, posted stories about how he had helped single mothers and struggling small business owners keep their cars running. Other customers began sharing their experiences. Slowly, something beautiful started happening. For every bad review Grayson's people posted, 3 genuine positive ones appeared. Local news picked up the story, not of a scandal, but of a community fighting back against corporate bullying. They were still in trouble. The eviction date was still looming, and money was tight. But for the first time since everything fell apart, they had hope. And in the end, that hope came from the very people Grayson looked down on, the working families who needed their cars fixed, the small business owners who depended on reliable service, the community that knew the value of honest work. You were right, Noah said one evening, holding Lena as they watched the sunset from his small balcony. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what really matters. Lena snuggled closer to him. The view wasn't as spectacular as from the penthouse, but the arms around her were real, and the love in her heart was worth more than all of Grayson's billions. The community support was touching, but it wasn't enough to save the garage. With only 2 weeks left before the eviction, Noah and Lena were running out of options. Then Noah's old friend Mike called with news that would change everything. There's a vacant garage for sale in Brooklyn, Mike said. The owner's retiring. It needs work, but it's a good location. Noah's eyes lit up when he saw the place. It was bigger than his current garage with better equipment. The price was high, but not impossible if they could get a loan. We can make this work, Noah told Lena as they walked through the empty space. If we can just get the financing. But Grayson had made sure no bank would touch them. That's when Lena remembered something, or rather someone. Charlotte Reed, she said suddenly. Who? Grayson's first wife. The one who divorced him 15 years ago. Lena had met her once at a charity event. She owns Reed Investment Group now, and she hates Grayson more than anyone. Getting a meeting with Charlotte wasn't easy, but Lena was persistent. Finally, They found themselves in a sleek office overlooking Central Park. Charlotte Reed was in her 50s, elegant and sharp-eyed. She listened to their story without interruption. "So," she said when they finished, "my ex-husband is trying to destroy you both." A slow smile spread across her face. "How would you like to make him very, very angry?" She offered them a loan on fair terms, with one condition: they had to expand. Not just one garage, but a chain of honest, affordable auto repair shops. New. "York needs more businesses that actually help people," Charlotte said, "and nothing will infuriate Grayson more than watching you succeed." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. They signed the lease on the Brooklyn garage and started renovations. Their social media campaign kept growing, with more customers, sharing stories. Then Grayson made his next move. Lena was at the new garage helping paint walls when Noah got the call. His sister Amy was hysterical. "They're foreclosing on Mom's house," Amy cried. "The bank says her loan is in default, but that's impossible. She's never missed a payment." Noah's mother had taken out a small home equity loan years ago. Somehow, Grayson had gotten hold of it. "He's going after my family now," Noah said that night, his voice breaking. "Mom could lose her house because of me." Lena held him as he cried, rage building in her heart. This wasn't business anymore, this was pure cruelty. The next morning, she did something she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. She went to see Grayson. His secretary tried to stop her, but Lena knew all the access codes. She walked straight into his office. "Well, well," Grayson smiled coldly. "The prodigal girlfriend returns." "Leave Noah's mother alone," Lena said firmly. "She has nothing to do with this." "Everyone has something to do with this." Grayson leaned back in his chair. "Actions have consequences, Lena. You chose this." "No, you're choosing this. You're choosing to be a monster. I'm choosing to show you what happens when you cross me." He stood up. "Noah's mother is just the beginning. I'll take everything from him piece by piece until there's nothing left, unless what? Come back to me." His voice softened. "We can say you had a momentary lapse of judgment. The press will love a reconciliation story. Noah keeps his new garage, his mother keeps her house, and everything goes back to normal." Lena stared at him, realizing something. "You still think this is a game, don't you? That you can buy me back like one of your companies? Everything has a price, Lena, even love." She walked to the window, looking out at the city. 3 months ago, she would have been intimidated by his threats. But something had changed in her. "You're right," she said quietly. "Everything does have a price, including the truth about what really happened with the Henderson deal." Grayson's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "I was there, remember? All those late-night meetings, all those secret phone calls. I saw the documents you thought you'd hidden." She turned to face him. "What would the SEC think about those offshore accounts?" The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing. Try me." Lena walked to his desk. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Noah's mother alone. You're going to stop interfering with his business. And you're going to do it, because if you don't, I'll tell everyone exactly how you really made your billions." "You little..." "Careful." Lena cut him off. "I learned from the best, remember? You taught me that power isn't about money. It's about knowing things other people want to keep hidden." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Grayson, the next time you try to hurt someone I love, remember this conversation." Back at the new garage, she found Noah arguing with contractors about the ventilation system. He looked worried when he saw her face. "Where were you?" "I've been calling..." Lena kissed him. "Taking care of some unfinished business. Call your sister, tell her your mom's house is safe." "What? How?" "Let's just say I finally learned how to play Grayson's game." She looked around at their half-finished garage. "Now what do you say we focus on building something good?" Noah pulled her close, not caring that they were covered in paint and dust. In the background, workers carried in new equipment, and the sound of construction filled the air. They were building something new, something honest. And this time, no one could tear it down. The Brooklyn garage was almost ready to open when Lena got an unexpected visitor. She was organizing the new office when an elegant woman in her 60s walked in. "Mrs. Wolfe?" Lena recognized Grayson's mother immediately. "Please call me Victoria. The older woman looked around the garage. Quite different from what you're used to. Victoria Woolf was a legend in New York society. She had shaped Grayson into the ruthless businessman he became after his father died. "What can I do for you?" Lena asked cautiously. "You can explain why you're destroying my son." Victoria's voice was soft but cold. "First you humiliate him by running off with that mechanic, then you threaten him with blackmail." So Grayson had told his mother about their conversation. Lena stood her ground. "Your son tried to make a woman lose her home just to hurt her son. That's the kind of man he is now. That's the kind of man I raised him to be." Victoria smiled without warmth. "The world isn't kind to the weak, dear. I thought you understood that." "I understood too well." Lena met the older woman's gaze. "That's why I left." Victoria opened her designer purse and pulled out a check. $1 million. "Take it and disappear. Leave New York, leave Noah, just go." Lena looked at the check, then back at Victoria. "Did Grayson send you?" "Grayson doesn't know I'm here. This is from me." Victoria's face softened slightly. "You're not the first woman to think she could change things. Charlotte tried years ago. Look how that ended." "I'm not trying to change anything," Lena said. "I'm just trying to live honestly. Honest people end up poor and broken. Is that what you want?" Noah's voice came from the doorway. "Better poor and honest than rich and empty." Victoria turned to face him. Noah was in his work clothes, grease on his hands from working on a car. He looked nothing like the polished businessman Victoria was used to. "Mr. Carter." Victoria's voice dripped with disdain. "I supposed I shouldn't be surprised to find you eavesdropping in your own establishment." "This is a place of business, ma'am. A honest business. Your money's no good here." Victoria looked between them, something like pity in her eyes. "You really think love conquers all? That good always triumphs over evil? This isn't a fairy tale." "No," Lena agreed. "It's better. It's real." After Victoria left, Noah pulled Lena into his arms. "You okay?" "I just feel sad for her," Lena said. "And for Grayson. Living like that, seeing love as weakness." "Speaking of love," Noah seemed nervous suddenly. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. The ring inside wasn't expensive, just a simple silver band with a small diamond. "I know it's not much," he started, but Lena cut him off with a kiss. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Yes." The news of their engagement spread quickly through New York society. The gossip columns had a field day. From billionaire to broke, society girl chooses love over luxury. But something unexpected happened. Women started coming to the garage, rich women, society wives. They brought their expensive cars and their stories. "My husband's just like Grayson," one whispered to Lena. "I wish I had your courage." "How did you know it was worth it?" another asked. "Giving up everything?" Lena looked around at the garage, at Noah teaching a young apprentice, at the wall of thank you cards from satisfied customers, at the community they were building. "I didn't give up everything," she told them. "I just traded fake perfection for real happiness." The Brooklyn garage became more than just a business. It became a symbol of hope. Women who felt trapped in loveless marriages found excuses to bring their cars in just to talk. Young girls from the neighborhood started asking about apprenticeships. Then one morning, Charlotte Reed showed up again. "Your story is inspiring people," she said, "especially women. I have a proposal for you." She wanted to feature their garage in a documentary about women breaking free from toxic relationships. The working title was Trading Gold for Happiness. "People need to see that there's life after leaving," Charlotte explained, "that sometimes the biggest risk brings the biggest reward." As she talked, Lena watched Noah through the office window. He was showing Mrs. Rodriguez's teenage daughter how to change oil, treating her with the same respect he showed all his customers and employees. "Okay," Lena said, "but on one condition, we tell the whole story. Not just about leaving Grayson, but about building something new, about finding strength in community instead of money." Charlotte smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." That night, as they closed up the garage, Noah caught Lena staring at the engagement ring on her finger. "Having second thoughts," he teased. "Never." She kissed him. Just thinking about how far we've come, and how far we still have to go, he added. The second garage opens next month. Lena smiled. Their little revolution was growing. One honest garage at a time, they were proving that success didn't have to mean selling your soul. Outside, the Brooklyn street was quiet. No photographers, no society columnists, no drama. Just real people living real lives, and for Lena, that was worth more than all the penthouses in Manhattan. The documentary changed everything. After it aired on a major streaming service, Noah and Lena's story went viral. Women across the country started sharing their own stories of choosing love over money, of finding the courage to leave toxic relationships. But with that attention came trouble. One morning, Noah arrived at the garage to find all the windows smashed. The security cameras had been disabled the night before. "It has to be Grayson," Lena said as they swept up broken glass. The documentary humiliated him. But it wasn't Grayson. The police investigation revealed something more disturbing. The vandalism was connected to a group of men's rights activists who had targeted their garage after the documentary. "You're making men look bad," their leader wrote in online posts, "teaching women they don't need us." The threats started coming daily. Noah hired security, but Lena could see the equal strain it was putting on their finances. The second garage's opening had to be delayed. Then Amy, Noah's sister, called in tears again. Someone had broken into their mother's house, ransacked it, but stolen nothing. "This isn't about business anymore," Noah said that night, pacing their small apartment. "They're trying to scare us." Lena watched him, remembering how safe she used to feel in Grayson's penthouse, protected by doormen and security systems. But that safety had come at the cost of her soul. "We can't let them win," she said firmly. The next day she called Charlotte Reed. Within hours, Charlotte had organized a group of prominent businesswomen, CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs. They all had one thing in common. They'd fought their own battles against men who couldn't stand seeing women succeed. "We're starting a fund," Charlotte announced, "to help women leave abusive situations and start their own businesses. And your garage will be our first success story." The publicity from the fund brought more attention, both good and bad. But it also brought unexpected allies. Local business owners started watching out for them. The coffee shop across the street installed security cameras pointing at their garage. The deli owner, 2 doors down, gave their security guard free lunch every day. One morning, a sleek black car pulled up to the garage. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, familiar. "Victoria?" Lena was shocked to see Grayson's mother again. But this time, Victoria Woolf looked different, tired, vulnerable. "I saw the documentary," she said quietly. "It made me think about many things, about the kind of mother I've been, the kind of person I've become." She looked around the garage, but this time without judgment. "You've built something real here, something good. Why are you really here, Victoria?" "Because I have information." She pulled out a folder. "About the men threatening you, and about my son's involvement with them." Lena's heart sank. "Grayson is behind the attacks?" "Not directly, but he's been funding their organization through shell companies. I found the proof in his private accounts." Victoria's hands shook slightly. "I taught him too well, you see. Taught him that power was everything, that love was weakness. And now..." She started to cry. Decades of carefully maintained composure crumbling. Lena found herself hugging the woman who had once tried to buy her off. "Help me make it right," Victoria whispered. "Help me stop him before he destroys himself completely." The evidence Victoria provided was damning, not just about the harassment campaign, but about years of Grayson's illegal business practices. Everything Lena had suspected but could never prove. That night, she and Noah had a long talk. They could use the evidence to destroy Grayson completely. But would that make them any better than him? "What do you want to do?" Noah asked, holding her close. Lena thought about Victoria's tears, about the legacy of pain and power that had shaped Grayson into who he was. "I want to give him a choice," she said finally. "The same choice I had, to choose love over power, to choose being human over being right." The next day, they invited Grayson to the garage. He came, surprisingly, looking as polished as ever, but with new lines of strain around his eyes. "Mother told me she came to see you," he said stiffly. "She did." Lena handed him a copy of the evidence. "This is everything we have. Everything that could destroy you." Grayson flipped through the pages, his face growing paler. "What do you want?" "For you to stop. Not just the attacks, but everything. The corrupt deals, the destroying people for power, the teaching others that love is weakness." Lena took Noah's hand. "Choose to be better, Grayson. Choose to be human." "Or what? You'll expose me?" "No," Noah spoke up. "We'll help you. Your mother wants to help you, but you have to choose it." Grayson stared at them for a long moment. Outside, the sounds of Brooklyn traffic filled the silence. Regular people going about their lives, loving, working, trying their best. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know." "How?" "That's okay," Lena said gently. "None of us did at first, but we learned." Victoria was waiting outside. When Grayson saw her, something cracked in his carefully maintained facade. "Mom," he said, sounding for the first time like the little boy he must have been once before power and money twisted everything. Mother and son hugged, both crying now. Lena and Noah slipped away, giving them privacy. "Think it'll work?" Noah asked as they walked hand in hand through their neighborhood. "I don't know," Lena answered honestly. "But everyone deserves a chance to choose love, even Grayson." Above them, the Brooklyn sky was turning pink with sunset. Their garage stood solid and real, a testament to choosing truth over appearance, love over power. And somewhere in Manhattan, a mother and son were taking their first steps toward healing, toward choosing a different kind of strength. 6 months passed. The threat stopped. The second garage opened, then a third. Noah and Lena's honest auto repair chain was becoming a symbol of change in New York. Their wedding day dawned bright and clear. No fancy hotel ballroom for them. They chose to have it right in the first garage, now cleaned and decorated with flowers. Their employees had insisted on helping, transforming the workspace into something magical while keeping its honest character. "Are you sure about this?" Amy asked as she helped Lena with her simple white dress. "You could have had the biggest society wedding New York's ever seen." Lena looked around at the garage where everything had started. Toolboxes had been pushed, aside to make room for chairs. The hydraulic lifts were decorated with white ribbons. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I've never been more sure of anything," she said. The guests were a mix of their worlds, mechanics in their Sunday best, society ladies who had become regular customers, Noah's family, and even some of Lena's old friends who had chosen to stand. By her, Victoria Woolf arrived early, looking different than she had 6 months ago. Softer somehow, more human. The therapy sessions with Grayson were helping them both heal. "He wanted me to give you this," Victoria said, handing Lena an envelope. Inside was a letter from Grayson. "Dear Lena, I won't come to the wedding. We all know that would be inappropriate. But I wanted you to know that you were right. Choosing love over power isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength. Mother and I are working on being better. I have started a foundation to help small businesses survive against corporate takeovers. Maybe someday, I'll learn how to truly love someone the way Noah loves you. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. Thank you for showing me there was another way. Be happy. You deserve it. Grayson." Lena wiped away tears, careful not to smudge her makeup. Outside, she could hear the guests arriving, could hear Noah greeting people with his warm laugh. Charlotte Reed arrived in her usual style, bringing news. "The fund has helped 50 women start their own businesses this year," she announced proudly. "You two started a movement." Mrs. Rodriguez came with her entire family, including her daughter Maria, who was now apprenticing at their second garage. "You showed my girl she could be anything," Mrs. Rodriguez said, hugging Lena. The ceremony was simple. Noah and Lena exchanged vows under the garage's main light, which someone had turned into a makeshift chandelier with fairy lights. "I promise to love you honestly," Noah said, his voice shaking slightly. "To build a life with you that's real and true every single day." Lena squeezed his hands. "I promise to choose you, choose us, choose love, every day for the rest of our lives." Their kiss was interrupted by the sound of motorcycles outside. For a moment, everyone tensed, remembering the threats. but it was just the local motorcycle club, all customers of Noah's, arriving to form an honor guard. The reception was nothing like the society parties Lena used to attend. Card tables held homemade food brought by their customers. Music played from speakers borrowed from the garages. Waiting room. Noah's old jukebox had been restored for the occasion. They danced their first dance between two car lifts, and nobody cared that the floor was concrete instead of marble. "Happy?" Noah asked, holding her close. "More than I ever thought possible," Lena replied. Victoria watched them from her seat, remembering her own society wedding decades ago. All that perfection, all that pretense. This was better, messy and real, and full of genuine joy. Later, as the party wound down, Lena found herself sitting with Charlotte and Victoria, 3 generations of women who had each found their own way to break free. "You know," Charlotte said, "when I left Grayson, I thought I was just saving myself. I never dreamed it would help others find their courage." Victoria nodded. "Sometimes the bravest thing is showing others it's okay to be brave." Lena looked across. The garage at Noah, who was teaching some of the kids how to do the chicken dance. And sometimes the bravest thing is just being real. The sun was setting, sending golden light through the garage's windows. Outside, New York City was changing, one honest business, one brave choice at a time. "What's next for you two?" Charlotte asked. Lena smiled, her hand drifting to her stomach. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Noah. But soon, very soon, their little family would be growing. "We keep building," she said simply. "We keep choosing love." As if on cue, Noah appeared, holding out his hand. "One more dance." Lena took his hand, letting him pull her close. Around them, their communities, old and new, rich and working class, all the people who had become part of their story, celebrated together. This wasn't the ending Lena had imagined. For herself 3 years ago, it was better, it was real, and it was just the beginning. 1 year after the wedding, Noah and Lena stood in front of their newest garage. This one was special. It was in Queens, right next to where Noah's original shop had been. "Ready?" Noah asked, holding their 6-month-old daughter, Rose. Lena touched her baby's soft cheek before cutting the ribbon. This garage was different from the others. Half of it was an auto repair shop, but the other half was something new, a training center for women interested in learning the trade. The idea had come to Lena during her pregnancy. She'd watched more and more women coming to their garages, not just for repairs, but asking about jobs, about learning the trade. Why should men have all the fun? She'd joked with Noah. But they both knew it was more than fun. It was about independence, about having skills nobody could take away from you. The crowd at the opening was bigger than they'd expected. Charlotte Reed was there, of course, along with Victoria Woolf. But there was also a surprise guest, Grayson. He looked different now. The perfect suits were gone, replaced by business casual. The cold mask he used to wear had softened. "Congratulations," he said, keeping a respectful distance. "You've built something remarkable here. Would you like to meet her?" Lena asked, nodding toward baby Rose. Grayson's eyes filled with tears as Noah carefully placed the baby in his arms. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mother." Victoria watched her son hold the baby, remembering how she'd once tried to buy Lena off. Now her granddaughter was apprenticing at one of Noah and Lena's garages, learning honest work instead of power plays. The training center was already full. Women from all walks of life had signed up. Society wives looking for independence, young girls from the neighborhood, even a few businesswomen tired of corporate games. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter, Maria, was one of the instructors now. She'd finished her apprenticeship and gotten her certification. "We are changing things," she told the new students, "one oil change at a time." That night, after the celebrations were over, Lena and Noah took baby Rose up to the roof of their building. The New York skyline sparkled around them, but it didn't feel distant anymore. This was their city now too. "I got a call from that TV producer again," Lena said, cradling Rose. "They want to do a reality show about the training center." Noah laughed. "From society girl to mechanic's wife to TV star? I was thinking we could do it differently. Show the real stories, the women learning trades, building independence." No drama, just truth. Like us, Noah said softly. Like us. Rose cooed in her sleep, and both parents looked down at their daughter. She would grow up in a different world than the one Lena had left behind. A world where love was stronger than power, where being real meant more than being perfect. Their phones buzzed with a news alert. Another major scandal had broken in high society, some billionaire caught in lies and corruption. But Lena and Noah didn't bother reading. That wasn't their world anymore. Their world was in garages and training centers, in helping people build better lives, in the community they'd created. Their world was in choosing love every day, in staying real, even when it was hard. Victoria had been right about one thing. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was the story of a woman who dared to choose love over luxury, truth over perfection. The story of a man who proved that honest work was worth more than all the power in the world, and now it was the story they were passing on to others. Every woman who learned a trade in their centers, every customer who found honesty in their garages, every person who chose love over fear, they were all part of the story now. Baby Rose stirred in Lena's arms, and Noah wrapped them, both in a hug. Below them, the city hummed with life. Somewhere out there, another woman was gathering the courage to change her life. Another person was choosing love over power. And in a small apartment above a garage in Queens, a family held each other close, knowing they had built something rare and precious, a life that was completely, wonderfully real. "I love you," Noah whispered. "I love you too," Lena replied. No cameras flashed, no society columnists took notes, no one documented this moment for posterity, but that made it more precious, not less. Because in the end, the greatest love stories aren't the ones that make headlines, they're the ones that change lives, one honest choice at a time. Rose slept peacefully between them, the future in her tiny hands. And above them all, the stars shone down on New York City, where a woman had once traded gold for happiness and found something worth far more than all the billions in the world. She had found her truth, her love, her real life, and that was worth everything.